Greetings, viewers. This is King H from Southern Cameroon and Botswana. Welcome to my platform. This is a Pan African platform. Please like, share, and subscribe. The discussion that I will be having today comes from an article that I came across, and the title of this article is Why African Countries Back China Against the West on Human Rights. But before I continue with this discussion, I would like to say that this platform discusses geopolitical issues across the world and especially Africa. And you could tell from the title of this article why African countries back China West on against the West on human rights. The geopolitical discussions is centered around African countries, China, and the Western nations or the West. But let me give the main points of this article's discussion. African countries have not signed up to UN rebukes on China's human rights violation in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and Tibet. African countries are not calling out China for its treatment of mostly Muslim Yuan population in northwestern region of Xinjiang. China faces accusation of forced labor, forced sterilization, torture, and genocide allegation, but China denies. If this is actually true, this means that African leaders are taking the side of evil. That's pretty bad. But why are they really taking sides with China over the West? African leaders and China have a common understanding based on three main ideas: human rights, economic interests, and non interference in internal affairs. Hmm. If actually Africa could have such understanding with Western nations, I think Africa will be a lot better because Western countries have interfered a lot in Africa, which has helped to destroy the economic growth of Africa because Western nations depend on the natural resources available in Africa, where they create an unfair business trade deals that benefit the West but does not benefit Africa. Though again, African leaders use the funds they get for their own selfish, greedy self. African countries pro China largely has a pro China position in pitting the continent against the West when it comes to the human rights. 25 African countries support China during a vote in June 2020 at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva about the controversial Hong Kong. So, in other words, the West was trying to bring uniformity between other nations to, you know, tell China to stop doing what they're doing to Hong Kong. But 25 countries in Africa decided to take the side of China, and this because of that act they couldn't do much when it comes to Hong Kong. Human Rights Watch accused African leaders of prioritizing economic benefit from China at the expense of the global concern. I find this very, very interesting. See, the world's always want to use other nations to achieve their own agenda when it comes to global concern. But because Africa needs China, because China helps Africa economically. Africa benefits from the economy of China. So, because of the economy benefits that they receive from China, they have decided to support China. 25 of the countries actually support China over the West, which is why there's this issue going on between China, Africa, and the West because Africa supports China over the West. But if you think about it, when it comes to economic power, Africa doesn't have economic power. And why is the reason? Why is it that Africa doesn't have a strong economic power? Because of the interference of the Western nations. First of all, when you think about the creation of the countries in Africa, who created this country? Western powers. Who have benefited from the resources of Africa over Africans? Western powers, which has helped to destroy the economic growth of Africa. So African leaders are trying to manage what they have at the expense of Western influence controlling through IMF, World Bank, and sanctions. It has destabilized the continent to the point where Africa doesn't have the power to stand on its own 2 feet. So Africa has to be between the West or China. China is aiding Africa to help build up Africa. So Africa says, hey, this is the person that is supporting us, not you guys. So we're going to support them regardless of what they are doing to the people in Hong Kong, Tibet, or Xinjiang. They decide to support China. Now, when it comes to proof or evidence to show where the Chinese are, causing genocide, forced sterilization, torture to the people of Wuhan. I think the world needs true evidence. Just by saying it, accusing them without evidence, it's not a really strong case. Now, if you look at the movement of Black Lives Matter, where at one point about a month ago, China accused the United States of doing the same shit to African Americans. That police there's racism towards black people in the United States, and you trying to call us on our own for sterilization, supposed genocide allegations. Hey, China said we're gonna call on you, and well, Black Lives Matter is an impactful movement that is shaking in a way is being used by the Chinese to tell the Western powers in their place. Will it work? Probably not, because the West is still trying to push their allegations against forced sterilization or allegations towards forced sterilization, forced labor on the Wuhan people. And with the issues in Hong Kong, Tibet, and even Taiwan, there's gonna be a, a huge war between the West and the East, which means Africa is playing with fire, and Africa or African leaders do not have the power to protect themselves between the West and the East, which means that African leaders should not even interfere in none of their business in the first place and try to build the power structure so that African countries or the continent can have a voice with, with the might to stand on its own 2 feet against China or the West or any other country and speak freely without taking side because somebody's giving them something. Human Rights Watch accused African leaders of prioritizing economic benefits from China at the expense of the global concern. Global concern, but when you think about a global concern, does it really concern Africa? Do African leaders don't really care about the global concern? They're trying to survive in a world that the Western the Western powers carved off the continent and created nations, and then made sure that those nations cannot grow economically powerful. In a way, Africa still depends on either the West or now it's running towards the East, towards China, in order to build herself up. Why? Because Africa is not economically powerful. Without strong economics, you can speak. Without being able to survive, you don't have the power to stand and speak truth to other nations because those two other nations are more powerful. So Africa is caught in between two giants, two elephants. And the two elephants want their support from Africa, being it the West or being it China. For 30 years now, has made a tradition that its foreign ministers visit Africa every year. Africa depends and are indebted to Beijing for the bulk of their trade. So eh, um, a lot of growth is happening in Africa, but that growth that is happening in Africa is due to the fact that China is pumping money in Africa. So Africa has no other choice but to turn the other cheek to the West and say, hey, this is the person that supports us, despite the fact that they're doing all the stuff to the nations like Hong Kong, Tibet, Taiwan by Chinese. We are gonna stand with them regardless. We're gonna, support them because they're supporting us. But if you look at the history of the West in in supporting Africa, they have taken more from Africa than they have given. And because they have taken more from Africa than they have given, they have made sure to they made sure to destabilize Africa so that Africa cannot grow, so that Africa will have to depend on the West. But when a giant like, or a dragon like China rose, and how did China rise? It was because Western powers decided to take their companies to China for cheaper labor, which helped boost China to become the superpower it is today, at even standing and speaking toe to toe to the Western powers, is because the West helped build the economy of Africa, and in the process of building the economy, I mean not of Africa, of China, in the course of building the economy of China by bringing businesses in China, China grew, and now China has a financial power, military power, all the powers it need to stand against the West. But Africa doesn't have the power because the West made sure that Africa should not have the power to grow. Just like if you look into the Western world or Western power towards blacks in Western world, the Western powers made sure that the blacks in the Western world depend completely on the Western powers or the Western nation. If they try to grow and become more independent, they crush their spirit to make sure that they always depend on Western countries. It's the same thing that the Western world, the Western powers did to Africa, dominated after colonizing and enslaving Africans. They made sure that we could not grow economically, more powerful. They controlled, they did, other things using um, IMF, World Bank, sanctions, and unfair business deals that made them richer but made Africa poor. Our leaders wrong in supporting China? Yeah, probably, definitely wrong. But what can they do? They always say the hands that feeds is the hands that, you know, the hands that feeds you is the hands that speaks. So Africa has no choice but to support China. And the West shouldn't hold Africa on that because the West is the one that created the nations in Africa and made sure that those nations' growth are controlled so that it doesn't become powerful or become as equal in power as Western powers. Just like blacks in the Western nations, like blacks in the United States, faces racism, systemic racism that destroys the lives of black people. Is the same system that has been applied to African countries so that African countries cannot grow. Now the West wants the support of African countries when it comes to China, a nation that they help build by bringing business in China through cheaper labor so that they make more money. But that China took in those business and grew and became a powerful dragon, not to be messed with. But Africa needs to understand that they will always be in the same conundrum. It doesn't matter if it's from the West or the East, so long as Africa doesn't have the power to stand on her own 2 feet, Africa will always be a beggar to Western powers or China or any other power in the world. What Africa needs is economic power, financial power, and in the process of achieving financial power, it will be able to create the military power needed to support the continent. Power speaks. The reason why the Western nations divided Africa into the countries that they are is because they had the power to do so. And the reason why they control, especially France controls French African nations, create their own currency. The French African currency is embedded to France, which means it helps enriching or enriches France. Same thing with almost the same thing with British Africa or English Africa. Because English Africa or British Africa is colonized by the United Kingdom or British, they have to be under the common law. The common law does not, no, not common law, excuse me, the Commonwealth. They have to be under the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth does not necessarily benefit Africa, but benefits the United Kingdom with the same institution as the Francophonie institution that France uses in French African countries to control and enrich themselves. The Francophonie institution and the Commonwealth institution are not good for Africa, must be disposed because we are no longer in colonization. Those are colonized institution that's been used to control Africa. Africa must get rid of both the Francophonie institution and the Commonwealth institution. But I wish we still colonize. We still neo-colonize. The system is there to make other nations richer and powerful. And because of that, and many more other things that are happening, Africa cannot have the power it needs to be a superpower in the world. And because of that, the children of Africa, wherever they are in the world, suffers. But the West doesn't give a damn about that. The West wants to use whoever they want to use to achieve their own agenda. That's just the truth. But if Africa wants to achieve her own agenda, Africa must become economically powerful. That's what Africa needs to become so that Africa will not have to take sides over China or Western powers, but speak truth to both of them, whoever is doing wrong. But we're not in that position to do that, and the West expects us to do that. But they are the one that help cripple the growth of financial powers in Africa, the growth of economic power in Africa. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You should deal with China. Don't call Africa. It's not Africans' consent. It's really not African consent. You help build China. China is as powerful or almost as powerful as most of the Western nations. And they want the power. And this is something that they're battling. But then again, they're still trying to use Africa because Africa has the resources that they need, China needs, despite what they might claim with these three um, interests, three understanding that they have, of the three main ideas that they have as an understanding based on human rights, economic interests, and non-interference in internal affairs. Meanwhile, Chinese are interfering in all aspect in Africa. And our leaders are speaking up on that. So it doesn't matter if the West wants to use Africa to control or to influence what is happening in China. Truth is that simple. Africa needs the power to stand in this world of powers. Without powers, we will remain slave to whoever is in power. And whoever is in power will try to use us for their own purposes. The West is trying to use us for their own purposes, and China is trying to use us on their own purposes. But we don't have the power, so at the end, We will have to speak on whoever is powerful. And whoever wins between the wars of the West and China will determine our faith only if we do not stand as an economic power in the world, which will help build our military power. This is the key we need to change the continent and the influences of what is to happen in the world. This is King Agent. Like, share, subscribe, share your comments. Till next time.